What are some of the biggest, like the top 2 or 3 challenges that college kids are facing while they transition into college and then potentially as they try and transition out of college? Do you feel that the higher education system is due for a big shakeup for more independent, smaller schools to come in?
If we're smarter about student loans when we're getting into school from the inception and we make better decisions, we can minimize those loans.
We are living in one of the coolest times to go and build wealth that I
Absolutely.
think there has been since the stock market and different things like that were
Absolutely.
created.
When you look at student debt, it's a seismic $1.67 trillion. That means this is something that's impacting millions of Americans, and no one really talks about it.
Welcome back to another episode of Beyond the Wealth. I'm your host, Andres Sanchez, and today I have Angelina Carvalhal, the owner and CEO of ANC Consulting. We're going to talk deeply about what she's doing, how it ties into school and college and education. And for me, you all know I'm not too far removed from college. So this is an exciting conversation for myself to be able to learn and hear what she's doing to help impact the younger generations, which we know is extremely important. Angelina, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me on this. Thank you.
I want to just go right into it and allow you to give us a little bit of an elevator pitch. Who is Angelina?
Wow. Well, that's a complicated question, but I'm going to nutshell it for you. I am, I'm an immigrant. I migrated from South America at a very young age with my family, and I'm a mom. I have children that are college age students, and then I have little ones. So I have 2 generations of children. I am passionate about education and the future of young people in America, in particular, the future of higher education and where it sits currently, and the debt that, students, young adults are incurring while they're pursuing higher education. I'm a fun-loving person. I'm a regular person like everyone else, but progression is really important, particularly for this generation. I think Generation Z and millennials, you guys are uniquely positioned to really change the world and do amazing things. I think you need the right tools. And once you have the right tools and you understand the power in the tools that you have, you will take off. So that's me in a nutshell. I like to have fun. I'm a little bit of a geek with the numbers and figures. I like data, I think data really paints a good, true picture of what's going on. So it's oftentimes when you speak to people, there's a lot of emotion in it, but I look at the data and I look at the emotion that can kind of tell a story to everyone. So that's me in a nutshell.
Amazing. And where do you think that passion for higher education came from and helping people in higher education? Where do you think that passion came from for you?
Sure. So, I come from a long line of educators and a long line of individuals that have helped, people. So I got that from my parents, really, coming from another country, implanted in America, and really trying to assimilate with the American culture. Education was really the key, the pathway to success. That is what was always taught to me as a young child, and I grew with that. Helping others, I think that is something that's in me. I think I'm a natural teacher, if you will. Not that I go out to teach, but I think it's something that I just exude. I feel comfortable in that position. And it's not only teaching, but it's actually doing research and bringing that data to individuals, meeting them where they are to help them understand the power they have. So it's really, I got it from my parents. I'm fortunate to still have mom and dad around, and they've always championed my education. I have a younger sister who is amazing and inspires me. She is a registered nurse. So we've always been, seeking education, looking for betterment, and trying to push forward.
Amazing. Uh, I think it's always interesting and it's always fun when people kind of follow a little bit of what their parents did and take a little bit from them and then put your own spin on it.
Yeah.
Obviously, as we talk through here, your involvement in the education space, especially higher education, isn't the typical involvement. You aren't a teacher, you aren't a college professor. I would say you have a relatively unique position in this. Where did that come from? Where did this idea to start this consulting agency that goes for and helps these people in college, where did that idea stem from?
Sure. So It's funny. I'll tell you a quick little story. I worked through college, right? So through college, I worked. I was always in retail, and I was in a district manager's position. So I worked in typical retail, clothing retail, in a district manager's position, and I was looking for a manager to run one of my stores. And I saw this really cool job that had a fusion of retail and education, kind of fused, mashed up together. And I thought, kind of cool, kind of interesting. It turns out that it was in the higher education space. I, went to the company, got the job, and stayed there for 16 years.
Oh,
During
wow.
that time, yes, during that time, learned a tremendous amount about, higher education, rubbing elbows with CFOs, faculty, academicians, student unions, student groups. So really got to understand higher education from a business aspect as well, from unbiased eyes, if you will. So I wasn't wedded to one particular institution. I was able to look at the different institutions that I worked with. I worked with 32 institutions between New Jersey, New York, and Connecticut, and trying to look at all of the similarities and the differences, and was able to see the gaps, to see where the needs were. And that's really how I kind of fell into this. It's something that comes second nature because I've done it for so many years. So, and during that time, I collected all of the data. So it made this consulting firm that we have very easy. It was an easy transition to move into.
And when you speak about gaps, obviously, when you go to your website, you're able to see the services you offer. And I would assume those are the gaps that you find. But for people listening now that are curious and trying to understand what that consultant agency does, can you explain in a little detail what you offer and what those different services look like? And I guess what the gaps in the system were that you identified?
Sure, sure. Great question. So basically, what we do is we look at education from a holistic perspective. And that means, with the students at the center. So higher education is really about the edification of students. How do we get students to, seek higher education? How do we get students to better themselves, if you will? And all of the services that we offer really center on. So whether we're looking at the auxiliary enterprise, where there's services that are being delivered to students through, food service, campus retail, student housing, really looking at how those services really help and edify the students. And then we look at the academic side when we are looking at curriculum. Is the curriculum that students are actually involved with, does it reflect the student population? And how does that work in the students' world? And then we look at students themselves transitioning from high school, which, that often, you go from high school 3 months, you don't turn into an adult, a responsible adult in 3 months. It just
Yeah.
doesn't happen. So that transition and helping students assimilate to their environment, this new environment. And we're really conscious of the student and where the student sits. It's a very delicate balance between the student and the institution. And what we've found over the years is that there's often a disconnect. It's very fragmented where students are in one end. There's, student services. They're the academicians with academic services, and they're all trying to do what's right for the student, but they're not necessarily speaking to each other at the same time. So what we try to do is really bridge that gap and show them where they can actually create better services to better students. What we're seeing, what we've seen from the data, students tend to hop around. They tend
Mhm.
to hop around and incur tremendous student debt. They incur debt because they take classes. They see, sometimes they don't feel like they belong. Things are kind of fragmented, and students are really looking to just belong. So they look for where they can fit in, where they belong. And oftentimes when they take classes and they jump to another institution, they don't necessarily accept all of those credits. So they incur more bills. And what we're trying to do is help the schools to understand programming is essential, meeting the students' needs where they are, understanding the demographics, who the students are, and making an environment where they feel accepted, they feel seen and comfortable will keep them on their campuses, therefore reducing their debt. They will continue to stay the course. which will help the institution and also help the student. So we really look at it as an ecosystem, a holistic ecosystem with the students at the center to help minimize their debt and help everyone along the way.
And as I'm listening to this, I want to make sure I'm thinking about it the right way. Most of what you are offering is to the institutions, not directly to the students. Is that correct?
Some of it is to the institutions and some of it is to the students. So
Okay.
there is a portion of it that we are offering to the students. We do have a student body, if you will, that can sign up for information, more information, just wellness information, resources. We teach students how to handle the stress of, college and what that looks like, give them different techniques. So there's a whole support system that we've created for students. We're actively creating an app that will come out in a couple of months that we're going to
Awesome.
roll out nationally for students to be able to connect. Because what we're finding on different campuses, students oftentimes, they feel like they're in this by themselves and they think that no one else is experiencing it. And, it really, that is the misnomer that I think many young people think, I'm in it by themselves. What we're attempting to do is bring them together to show it doesn't matter what campus you're on, you're probably going through the same thing as
Sure.
someone else, and really create a system of support for students and networking as well. That's very important. So that's on the horizon.
Amazing. Well, I'm excited. That's very cool. And I think that that'll be very widely used, especially when you're trying to just connect with people on campus and at
Sure.
your current institution. I'm
Sure.
curious, you're obviously very much in the weeds and have your feet on the ground for this. What are some of the biggest, maybe like the top 2 or 3 challenges that college kids are facing while they transition into college and then potentially as they try and transition out of college?
Sure. Great question. So the biggest challenge is just transitioning into college. That shift, it is a seismic shift for many students, going to school and having everyone tell you what to do. And, having mom and dad or a parent being there to really guide you and shepherd you through your education is very different from the collegiate experience, whether you're home, whether you're a stay-at-home student or whether you're dorming, right? So it's a very, very different transition. Some students are able to assimilate very well and some students struggle. So what we try to do is really understand what is the student trying to achieve from this experience. And let me take a step back, Andres, and let me first say, what we really try to do with young people is understand, are you going to college because you think it's the right thing to do? Are you going to college because you're trying to land a job? What's your purpose for going to college? What's your purpose for, choosing higher education? And this is very important to really understand what the student wants to do. Because oftentimes, students jump into things. They think they want to have one major and they get their first semester, second semester, and it's like, not really what I want to do. I didn't really think through this. So we try to go through those pain points and the hiccups along the road that may come up where a student is not necessarily thinking, they're living in the now. And what we try to do is project the first year, the second year, the third year, and the fourth year to really get the student along to minimize their debt. So we try to understand, how are you approaching this? And is this the right step for you? And again, I'm going to say sometimes higher education is the right step for students. And it may not necessarily be, the right step for certain students. So sometimes, going to a trade school may be the best option. So really understanding what is your 5-year goal? What do you want to do after college, if you will, post-education, and trying to pick the best strategy for that student to be successful. Ultimately, the student is at the center of what it is we do. And then we go from there. We oftentimes bring in parents. Sometimes we need to have a sit down with the parents so the parents understand. Again, when you're looking at college, what we're also trying to teach students and families, college is an investment, and you
Yep.
really have to think of it as an investor. We've often been taught, and a lot of young people think that they're consumers, but understanding your power as an investor, you're investing not only in your future, but you're also investing in the institution. So making sure that the courses are correct, making sure that you're thinking about what is your return on your investment. So once you invest in this institution and you go there, make sure that the major you're choosing, you're going to be able to recoup what you've spent and then some. So these are all things that we teach students, we teach parents. We really want people to understand what they're getting into. When you look at student debt, it's a seismic $1.67 trillion. That means this is something that's impacting millions of Americans, and no one really talks about it. I think everyone thinks they have to go down the same path. And what we're trying to do is really educate everyone. If you're going to go down the path, understand what it is and make the best choices as an investor, because you're investing in the institution and you're also investing in yourself. So it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of fun. But I think once everyone is on board and they understand themselves as investors and not consumers, it kind of is a mindset shift.
Yeah, I love that way that you're phrasing that, because I do think that is the right way to look at it. And most people don't look at it from that perspective. They just feel like, I need to go to college. It costs this much money. I got to just go and do it. And I want to dive into the student debt because I am passionate about this. But I will be very upfront too. I had 2 first-generation American parents and 2 immigrant grandparents that worked their butts off, put money away for me, and allowed me to go to my local college, my local state school, and not have to incur student debt. And I'm very thankful for that opportunity. But I have plenty of friends and family members around me that didn't have that and were a little bit taken advantage of by the system, in my opinion. I find it, and I've said this multiple times on other podcasts, I find it insane that to go and get approved for a home loan, my fiance and I just went through this process. We both have great jobs. We both have 800 plus credit scores. And we had to fight tooth and nail to get approved for a couple $100,000. But an 18-year-old with no income, no credit score will be, no questions asked, approved for a $200,000 loan to go to school. And to me, personally, that feels predatory. And I'm happy that there's people like you that are doing what you can to educate people on that this is not the way that it needs to be. And I loved your point on making sure that the major you are picking allows you to recoup the investment that you're making on college. I think it was SoFi Bank or one of these newer banking apps companies that is now doing loans for college, but you have to tell them what you are going to go and get a major in. And that will directly impact the amount of money you are approved for. And some people think that's not fair. Some people, it is something that you will be thankful that they did in the long run, because I have people who leave college and are 200 plus thousand in debt and are interested in becoming a teacher, which is amazing. I think teachers should be paid more, but that's besides the point. They want to go and become a teacher. They want to follow their passions. Unfortunately, with the way it's set up right now, they will most likely not be able to pay those loans back at the current yearly salary a teacher makes. That situation to me is something that I am uneasy about, because I know it is affecting, like you said, millions of Americans. And at the end of the day, there will be a time where this comes back to bite everybody. The debt just continues. People continue to fall right into the system. And it almost feels like colleges are degree factories. You go and you are just going to get a degree because you think it's right, but nobody has a plan. At least from what I'm getting now, that's where you would come into place. You are there to help people make the plan, help people understand, and avoid going down this path.
Right. Yeah, thank you so much. You brought up some very, very valuable points, and that is really what we look at. Student debt not only impacts, families, it impacts society, right? It impacts society. It impacts the government. It impacts the way young people like yourself and your fiance are going to start a life to try to get loans. It really impacts everything. So if we're smarter about student loans when we're getting into school from the inception and we make better decisions, we can minimize those loans. If institutions are really catering to the needs of students and students go in feeling like they're seen, they're connected, the curriculum that's being taught, is helping them towards that career path, then there will be less student loans because students will actually finish in the right amount of time. So I'll tell you, the average school, when they're looking at creating a budget, the average 4-year degree is a student finishes in 6 years, and that's what the budget is based on, right? So if you think about that, it's not really, you have to push really hard and stay diligent and make sure you're taking at least 18 credits a semester or going to summer school every semester to finish within 4 years. So really educating students on that, and parents, right? And parents, to let them understand that you have to stay on the trajectory. We need to pick out a major that works for you. If you're going to be a teacher, then, you should probably go to that state school, right? If you're going to be a doctor, then maybe we can look at, or you're going into tech, really looking at where the job market is, making sure that you're aligning your career path with the job market and demand. It's critical when you're going into school. So I think these are things that are very necessary in today's market as AI expands, as we expand into the global market. It's imperative that young people and their families really take a hard look at the investments that they're making and making sure that those investments in the long run will turn out fruitful for young people. We really dig into that. And again, it's a partnership between, families and institutions, really bridging the gap, really getting more people into the conversation. For a very, very long time, it's educators having the same conversation. So the same group of people having the same conversations about the same thing. The only way to really move it forward is to diversify the conversation, bring more people, more voices in, get different perspectives so people really understand the full scope of what's at hand. And I think, oftentimes people shy away from that because they don't know. You don't know what you don't know until you know.
Yep, exactly.
So in that kind of thing, bringing more people, into the fold and educating as many people as possible to make better choices. Young people are at a wonderful, wonderful time. You're old enough probably to remember your parents saying, life begins at 40.
Yeah.
There was a specific reason why your parents, said life begins at 40. It's because at 40, that's when you could actually amass and acquire something. That's when you could actually, have experiences and experience different things in life. Well, today, young people walk around with computers in their pockets, in their hands, at their fingertips. So by 40, you can actually become a millionaire if you play your cards right. If you understand that you're an investor, you're a brand, and every decision you make should be based on that. You don't have to be a business major to understand the rules of business. And if you understand the rules of business, then you can actually flip the script on education, your education in particular, and you can set yourself up financially for a very fruitful future. So all of those things are just teaching mechanisms that we naturally do. It's something that's super important. And I think more people need to really get into the conversation to help young people and move them forward.
Yeah, I want to dive into two things you mentioned there. One, I absolutely love how you say to treat yourself like a business. Like you need to invest in yourself. You need to put yourself first. You need to make sure that you're doing whatever you can. Because I do, and I've said it over and over again, I do think if you are living right now and you are in your teens all the way through your mid 30s, we are living in one of the coolest times to go and build wealth that
Absolutely.
I think there has been since the stock market and different things like that were created. We have
Absolutely.
so much. We have literally the world at our fingertips every time we open our phone, our laptop, our computer. And even with the show, the amount of 21, 22, 20-year-olds that I've interviewed that are making hundreds of thousands of dollars off their phone, like that wasn't even feasible 15 years ago. And now we're here. And so I love that thought. The other thing I wanted to touch on, which we have a young demographic here, mostly that 18 to 25-year-old sits here and listens to us. And you talked a lot about how college is told to you that you will finish in 4 years. But in reality, it's really typically a 6-year period. And I don't think people understand. If you go to college and you do not, and you go over your credit hours, you go over the time allotted for you to finish that degree, you are charged double tuition for your remaining credits. I was somebody who was almost put in that situation, and that is the only reason I know it. And the reason that happened was I wanted to pursue a major. the major quickly, due to me not having a great counselor, the major unfortunately brought classes that had to do with coding that I wasn't at all qualified for. Had to make a quick pivot. I went to another major, but I wanted to pursue sales, and there wasn't a sales minor yet or a sales degree. There was a sales certificate, which is basically a minor. It was 6 classes. I wanted to go and take those 6 classes, and I was 1 credit away from hitting that double tuition mark. And I was able to get by, and it worked out. But I thought about all of the people who maybe aren't in a position to pay that double tuition, but need to finish what they've already invested in. And that didn't sit well with me. I didn't understand why the institutions put a rule like that in place. But I wanted to bring it up because most people don't know that until it happens to you.
Right. Yeah, no, that's a great point. The most important thing, when you're going to college, I think folks go in, they're kind of starry-eyed. Everything happens so quickly. To your point, you may not necessarily have the best person that's guiding you through that. And it's really your responsibility, because the schools will say, you're an adult now. It's your responsibility. So you have to stay up on, your classes. But again, creating a roadmap is what we do for students. We create a roadmap. We make sure that you're getting into the right major that works for you. And there is a plan. Your freshman year all the way through your senior year is planned out based on the course curriculum. And it's really, really important that students understand that. The other thing I will say for those young people that are in school currently, the best thing that you can do for yourself, if you have not done so, if you're with parents, is making your parent your guardian, giving them the authority to speak to the institution on your behalf. There is a rule, it's called FERPA. And what happens in FERPA, if a parent calls an institution to try to find out about financial aid or paying for a class, the school will say, we cannot speak to you because of FERPA. And oftentimes young people have to navigate financial, they've never done anything with finances, and they are the ones that have been put into the driver's seat, literally 18, 19, and 20-year-olds that have never really had any financial savvy. They now are, taking loans, and they are put into a situation where they have to speak on their own behalf and not have a parent who has a bit more experience in it. So my advice to all the young people, lean on your parents. Lean on your parents now so you don't have to move back home with them, because you've incurred a tremendous amount of student debt, and you can't pay, you can't get the job that you want for the major that you chose. And therefore you have to kind of hang out with mom and dad and delay starting your life. So the best thing that you guys can do is reach out to your school, write a letter. It's a FERPA letter, and you're giving your parent or your guardian, permission to speak about your finances on your behalf. That is the best thing that you can do. I'll tell you, I have a son who is in his senior year at college, and I am all over, making sure that he gets out on time. It's very, very important. And again, parents are often, they're busy, they're doing things, they don't understand the full scope of it, and things happen. And unfortunately, the debt is falling on young people and really delaying their lives. So you're starting your life off in a deficit for many, many Americans, which is unfortunate. So we have to do everything. My firm does everything to mitigate some of that the best way we can by educating and making sure that we keep young people on the right path.
The more I learn about this student loan and debt system, the more I think it is really just set up to fail people at an early age, which is unfortunate. Maybe that's a little bit on the extreme side, but to me still, it just feels like something that could be done so well and could really be put into place to actually empower and help people be successful, because at the end of the day, not everybody's going to be able to afford college, but
Right.
it still should be a luxury. It shouldn't be a luxury. It should be something that everybody can go and attain.
Right.
But the more I hear about the way they go about things, the way they do it is, how could you blame a 19 or 18-year-old with very little? Because I'll be honest, in high school, they don't teach you much about finance. You don't learn much about how to make a budget, how to set up a credit card, how to use your money, how to open a bank account, like all these things that, like you said, you don't become a full grown adult in 3 months over the summer, but you're expected to operate like a full grown
Right.
adult, and you're expected to now make real decisions.
Right.
So it's crazy to me that, unfortunately, I mean, luckily we have people like yourself that are getting in front of it, but it's unfortunate for the majority that just kind of fall into place and just fall into that system.
Yeah.
Um,
So what we have to do, Andres, is we have to, if no one speaks about it and no one makes noise about it, the system kind of goes,
yep.
as status quo. So unfortunately, a lot of Americans are not talking enough about this. A lot of parents aren't talking enough. A lot of young people aren't talking enough because of fear of the unknown. They don't know what's going on, so they don't understand. They can't tell. But when they graduate 6 months after and those loans kick in, that's when you're like, once you graduate, you're on the clock. So it's important to get ahead of it before it gets ahead of you. The reason why, the APRs are so high is because oftentimes people default. So kind of,
hmm
there's an old adage, Peter pays Paul, if you will. The person that's going to pay is going to pay higher, rate. It's unfortunate because people will default. But if we do our best to minimize the debt by keeping students, on track and matriculating and graduating on time, that will minimize the debt that they incur, and they will be able to get into careers that the job market is demanding, and not careers that they want because, I kind of want this, but really strategic, as a business person, a savvy business person should be, looking at the risks, looking at the demand and the supply, and making sure that you're making decisions based on that. Again, really shifting from that consumer to an investor. Always remember, you're investing in the institution. When you fill up that FERPA, they're able to see what your financial aid package will look like, and they're able to build a budget that goes to their net income. It's a business, right? It's a multi-trillion-dollar business, and we have to understand that. Parents and students have to understand that. And I don't think, we think about it in those terms. We think about, this is your education, you have to get it, but it comes with a price. And it's important that young people understand that price and they choose wisely when they're, looking at creating their future. Very, very important.
I'm curious about what you think on this theory. For me, I think that from an educational standpoint, we're at a little bit of an inflection point here. I
Sure.
think there is a growing interest in people trying to take control of what their college experience looks like, what their post high school experience looks like. Do you feel, as somebody who's obviously in the space, do you feel that the higher education system is due for a big shakeup, for more independent, smaller schools to come in, different new curriculums that are very focused on finances? Because I remember for me taking tons of classes in college that I feel like I wish I didn't pay for because I didn't gain much from them. But then when I went to go, and obviously now down the road, somebody who's left college, started businesses, works at a big company, there's plenty of things I would have wanted to learn more about. Do you think that there's this kind of appetite for a more independent, less big corporate and massive institution in the higher education space going forward?
I think that is a great concept. I think definitely higher education is due for an overhaul. And what that will look like will really determine how willing the educators and the academicians, the upper echelon of that type of uh, system, if you will, how they look at things and where the demand is. The fact of the matter is the world is changing. Global economics is changing. Businesses are changing. The structure of business are changing. We're doing this conversation via, I'm not in the room with you, right? So
Yeah.
the way people are interacting and exchanging, information happens very, very quickly. So the thought education of yesteryears has got to go through a revamp. What's happening right now, ever since COVID, and it started before COVID, but there's been this restlessness with young people, really trying to figure out, what do I want to do? Where do I want to go? So they're definitely searching and they're looking. And we're seeing in higher education enrollments go up, they go down. They're kind of all over the place. I mean, for the first time, there's been incremental increases semester over semester, but it changes very, very small numbers. So I think you're definitely right. I know that, dare I say, higher education will go through a renaissance very soon. It begs for that because Gen Z and Alpha Gen, the expectation is very different. The appetite of what students want to see and what they want to learn is different. And really, the world has changed. So, in order to really keep American students competitive with a global scale, we really have to understand what's out there and we have to meet the demands of the day. And it's very, very important that, higher education moves as quickly and becomes as agile as AI, because AI is moving and changing every day. We can't be afraid of it. Educators, academicians can't be afraid of that. Really have to embrace it and understand it and teach students how to use it responsibly. Once students understand how to use it responsibly and use it in a way that will enhance business and enhance agility and enhance production, then we become stronger as a society. So definitely, I think a renaissance will happen. And it will take, bold leadership. It'll take bold leadership. It'll take a business perspective, if you will, from an academician's point of view. But I think the time is right. I think it's right for the changing and the mixing. I think now is the season for that. So it'll be interesting to see what happens over the next, few years.
Yeah, I'm definitely very interested. And I like that you mentioned that brief point there on AI. And I say this like all the time, and I will continue to say it because I think people need to be educated. AI will not take your job. Somebody who is proficient in using AI will take your job.
Absolutely.
And it is important. Yep. And it is important that you go and do your due diligence, learn how to use the tools, play around with them. It's a lot of fun. And you will see, one, that it won't be the one taking your job. Two, that it will make you somebody that is extremely more efficient in what you do on a day-to-day basis. And we're just scratching the surface.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Before we go to my closing question that I ask every founder that I have on the show, I want to give you the opportunity here to just send a message to the younger people listening now that are entering college, maybe potentially just getting in or 1 year in. I want to allow you to leave a message for them on what advice you would give them to make these next 3, 4, 5 years in their life as successful as possible.
Sure. Thank you so much. So yeah, for the young people that are just starting out, college, or that are, have already gotten a semester under their belt, it's important to really reflect on what the experiences that you've had and really reflect on where you see yourself. It's important to have a roadmap. It's important to stay organized. Make sure that, you write your goals down, that you understand what you need to do to achieve those goals. Very, very important. Network. It's so, so important to network. The next person that you're sitting, next to in class, that could be your next business partner. It could be the next person that gets you a job. It's important to really diversify your network. And that means, talk to professors, talk to faculty, talk to your peers. Make sure that you build a good, strong network around you and pay attention to what's going on. It's very, very important. Enjoy your time, at school, but be focused. Really always focus on your investment. Very, very important because you're investing in yourself. So be true to yourself and stay focused on yourself and have a goal. And once you do that, when you set yourself up, once you graduate, I mean, the sky's the limit. But you definitely have to know where you are. And if you don't know where you are after the first year, you still got time to regroup because you probably would have only taken those precursory classes. So, everything is not lost, but really focus on that. And if you have a family, a family member, mom, dad, or whoever, a guardian that's with you, really speak to them and seek counsel. With older people that understand things, ask questions. It's okay. You don't have to start adulting just quite yet. When you get out, you'll have plenty of time to do that, but enjoy yourself. Enjoy yourself. So that would be my.
I love it. And I agree with all of those points across the board. The one that I will echo is your network is your net worth. And that is something that will not change, whether you're 18, 25, 45, always be open to meeting people. Almost all of the founders and amazing people that I've had on the show and that I've met along my journey, all are very adamant on be open to connecting with new people, be open to talking with new people. I can tell you firsthand, I am the guy that will talk to anybody that sits next to me, anybody that is near me in a room that I don't know, and I can talk for hours about the opportunities and doors that has opened for me. And it is something so simple that most people do not go ahead and take advantage of. We live in this amazing time. People are glued to their phones, glued to their computers. You would be surprised how nice it is to have somebody else or you to someone else say hi, make a connection, have a conversation, because it's almost not common anymore. And that is a competitive advantage that you will have against your peers. If you are more open to connecting with new people, you will be much more likely to be successful.
Absolutely. Well said. Well said.
Thank you. The question that I always end every episode with is somewhat similar to kind of what I had just asked you, but directed towards you. Now you've got all of this experience, all of this knowledge. If you could go back and talk to the 18-year-old you, what would be the one thing that you would tell yourself?
And I would tell myself, that's a great question. I would tell myself, stay on the path that you're on, continue to work and push forward. I would tell myself that, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to fail because failure is a part of growth and learning. Don't be afraid to fall and scrape your knees. You learn from your mistakes, you pick yourself up and you keep going forward. Just to keep pushing. Eventually you'll get there. That's what I would tell myself.
I love it. I want to make sure anybody that's still with us, whether it's listening or watching, to be able to go and connect with you. If what we've been talking about is hitting home, what social media, what platform is the best place for people to go and connect and potentially meet you? And also, please shout out where they can go from a website standpoint. And all of this will be linked in the description below for anybody that wants to go and pursue it.
Yes. So check me out on ANC Consulting 1 on IG. I'm also on LinkedIn at ANC Consulting. And then the website is www.anc.consulting. Would love to connect with anyone that needs any type of help. Reach out. We're always here. We're ready to help.
Amazing. Angelina, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thank you for giving all of this valuable information to our audience and our community. I know for a fact there are a few people who will be impacted by this, and that is the reason why we're here. So again, thank you so much for making the time for us, and it has been an absolute pleasure having you on.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Good night.